Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Women's Life Stories, we retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. The pounding started like a fist against a drumhead, hurried, insistent, as if urgency itself had found knuckles. I was rinsing rice for tomorrow's lunchboxes when Karina finally spoke without looking up from her phone. Cook for everyone tomorrow. Start at 3. The screen lit her face the way a stage light flatters a star. No delays this time, Helena. There are orders, and then there are sentences that rearrange a life. I had heard plenty of the first since moving into my son's house. This sounded like the second. My name is Helena Ward. I am 64 years old, which in our family seems to translate to available as in available to load the dishwasher, to sew buttons, to teach algebra before the school bus arrives, to unstain the white sofa after somebody's sparkling pomegranate experiment. I did not become available by accident. 4 years ago, my husband Arthur died after a slow, expensive illness that filled the house with machines and our checkbook with zeros. Silence moved in afterward and spread out on every chair. When Michael, our only child, said, "Mom, let us take care of you," I mistook it for rescue. I sold the little brick bungalow where Arthur and I had planted a pear tree and taught Michael to ride a bike in a figure 8. The realtor said the market was frenetic. It swallowed the house in a week. I brought my china, my books, Arthur's cufflinks, and a 6-figure sum that erased most of Michael and Karina's mortgage. We called it pooling resources. For a time, I believed we had made a new kind of home, one with a playroom, a garden trampoline, and enough grocery bags to line the hallway every Saturday. Then the asks multiplied like rabbits. Could I do school pickup since I wasn't working? Could I make dinner since I was already home? Could I watch the kids just this afternoon? Just this weekend? Just this week? While they went to a couple's retreat up north. It was as incremental and unspectacular as rust. By spring, I could tell you which burner ran hottest, which child lied about flossing, and exactly how many minutes Karina needed to frame a photo of pancakes for her followers. That Friday night, while the twins argued over a purple crayon, Karina cornered me at the kitchen island as if I were a contractor she meant to underpay. "The reunion is at noon tomorrow," she said, tapping her phone. 41 RSVPs, maybe more. That means prep starts at 3 a.m. Please don't mess up the timing like Easter. Like Easter, the ham had rested 20 minutes too long, the rolls 5 minutes too short, and a cousin who arrived 2 hours late complained that his deviled eggs looked tired. The accusation had been a seed. Tonight it was a root running under everything. "Karina," I began carefully, 3 too early for someone who doesn't pay rent. Uses our utilities and somehow leaves the pantry empty. She smiled quick and hard. "This is the least you can do." Least. The word struck me with the tidy force of a nail set. The least I could do. I thought of the transfer from my savings to their lender, the stack of PTA bake sales I had single-handedly supplied, the nights I fell asleep in a chair with a feverish child on my chest, while Karina posted from a rooftop bar. Something in me slid into place. It wasn't anger. Anger had been an untidy companion for months. This felt like the cold click of a seatbelt before takeoff. "All right," I said, gentler than I felt. 3 it is. Her mouth made that pageant smile I had come to recognize, the one that never reached her eyes. She turned on a heel that could have opened a wine bottle and disappeared toward the bedroom, still scrolling already elsewhere. I rinsed the rice again. I wiped the counter a final time. I walked through the house that had absorbed my labor so efficiently it had begun to believe I was part of the plumbing. The hallway mirror returned a woman I half remembered, gray braid, narrow shoulders, the crease beside the mouth that Arthur used to kiss, as if it were a second dimple. Upstairs, I pulled the suitcase from behind the winter coats. Not the big one. A big one makes noise. I folded the linen dress Karina said was too bright for your palate, slipped in a second pair of shoes, the wool cardigan with elbows Arthur had patched years ago, the book I kept meaning to finish and never did, because dinner burned at page 47. I took my passport, although I did not need it the way some people carry talismans or old love letters. Freedom weighs very little. At my desk, a little sliver of oak under the dormer window, I opened my laptop and typed first flight out Lihue, Minneapolis, to Denver to Lihue, departing 6:05 a.m. I bought the ticket with one click. A resort on the North Shore offered a winter special with ocean light I could feel through the screen. I booked a room overlooking the curve of beach where the map turned a shy pale blue. I did not comparison shop. The old me would have. The old me had clipped coupons and stacked them by category and checked unit prices in tiny fonts. The woman at the desk did not consult a coupon folder. She pressed purchase and listened to the house breathe. Downstairs again, the kitchen clock hummed toward 2. The refrigerator's light fell on rows of condiments and half a melon. Tomorrow, 40-some relatives would expect steam and spice in abundance. I left them something else. Not instructions, not a menu. I wrote a note, polite, precise, the truth arranged like cutlery, and tucked it beneath the ceramic rooster Karina bought for country vibes. I placed beside it a neat stack of receipts I had found while reconciling the household budget after the water heater repair. Numbers had a way of speaking when people refused to. At 2:30, the house lay quiet, the way a lake lies quiet before oars disturb it. I took my suitcase in one hand and my coat in the other and went out by the side door that doesn't squeak if you lift it slightly and pull. The night tasted like exhaust and snow metal. I had already called a taxi. It turned the corner right when I reached the curb, a small mercy that felt like a sign. "Airport," the driver asked, half-turning eyes soft with sleep. "Please, there's an extra 20 if we make good time." He drove in that attentive silence some people offer to strangers on the verge of weeping. My eyes stayed dry. The city along Hennepin gave way to warehouses, and then to the low-lit apparatus of departure. I tipped more than it cost to drive me and wheeled my little suitcase into the fluorescent morning of the terminal. There is a particular freedom in moving through an airport alone before dawn. Everyone is a story in transit. A woman in scrubs, a boy with a cardboard tube, a couple whose argument has lost words and now uses only eyebrows. I printed my boarding pass and discovered that the red-eye arrivals had not yet emptied the security line. Shoes off, jacket off, laptop out. I made the little ballet of plastic tubs and kept my smile for the TSA agent who double-checked the date on my license. "Business or pleasure?" he asked, as if there are only two categories for a life. "Pleasure," I said and felt the syllables land. Not apology, not justification, a fact. At the gate, the television murmured about weather. I texted the neighbor to ask without explanation if she would please collect the mail for a few days. I powered my phone all the way down after that. A phantom vibration buzzed along my palm and then stopped. The body learns to anticipate summons. It can unlearn, too. Boarding began with the usual courses: families with small children, those who require additional time, people whose loyalty is measured in miles and tears. I walked onto the plane with Group 4 coat over my arm book under it. A flight attendant with a braid thicker than mine called me Han and pointed me toward a row that miracle had an empty middle seat. Somewhere over the plains, the horizon pinked as if embarrassed by its own beauty. The seatbelt sign chimed off. The cart rattled forward. When asked, I requested sparkling water, and then because it was still night back home and day, where I was going, asked for the small bottle of champagne too. The bubbles were nothing special. The sound the cap made was. The cabin lights dimmed. People slept in the earnest, ungainly ways people sleep in public when their lives have been loud. I propped my elbow on the armrest and let my mind move carefully over the past 4 years. I thought about Arthur's last December when he could not cross a room without my shoulder, and the promise I made to him or to myself that I would go on living and not just continue. I thought about the day I moved in with Michael, about the first time Karina introduced me to her friends as Michael's mom. She helps out around the house, and how the word helps had erased everything it pretended to praise. 3 a.m. would arrive back in Minneapolis. The oven would be cold, the counters clean, the ceramic rooster standing guard over an envelope that did not contain recipes. I could picture Karina's confusion ripening into offense, and then into the thing that always came next, accusation rebranded as moral clarity. I did not feel triumphant. I felt exact the way a well-cut key feels exact as it slides into a lock that has been waiting for it. The captain announced our descent into Denver and the chance of light snow. I watched the wing lift and settle the far lights of an unfamiliar city spreading like a necklace dropped on the velvet. The boy with the cardboard tube clutched it in both hands as if it contained something alive. Perhaps it did. Perhaps many of us had boarded with fragile cargo we had not named, when we took off again over mountains now then water. I could not yet see. I closed my eyes. The cabin's white noise gathered itself around me like a shawl. There is a kind of rest that has nothing to do with sleep. In it, the body remembers what it is for. By the time Karina would pad into the kitchen in those slippers with the bows, by the time she would sniff the air for bacon and find only silence, I was watching a line of light advance across the Pacific, thin as a thread held taut between two fingers. The plane angled into it. Out the window, the world turned the color of apricots. I lifted the plastic cup and took a slow sip. It tasted faintly of aluminum and newness. I did not rehearse speeches or catalog injuries or plan rebuttals. I looked at the light until it filled the window. I sat very still, the way you sit when you're finally inside your own life. We came down through a sky the color of wet tin, then broke under the clouds into an island so green it looked freshly washed. The plane's wheels hissed and kissed the runway. Someone in the back clapped once awkward and sincere. I felt the click of the brakes, and under that, a softer click somewhere inside me, the sense of being returned to myself after a long layover. The air outside the terminal had that warm vegetal sweetness that makes you conscious of your own skin. A shuttle idled beneath a plumeria tree. The driver, a man with laugh lines like careful stitches at the corners of his eyes, lifted my suitcase with the gravity one gives to objects that might contain a story. "North Shore," he asked. "Yes," I said, and the word unknotted something between my shoulder blades. We threaded the coast road, the sea trading glances with us through breaks in the ironwoods. Sunlight shifted on the water as if someone somewhere were adjusting a dimmer. Chickens pecked the red dirt along the shoulder. A boy on a bike rode one-handed, eating a mango with the other, its gold flesh bright against his brown fingers. I watched the world go by as if it had been arranged and cued for me. Mountain cane grass, a stand of rainbow eucalyptus that looked painted after the paint had run. At the resort, a young woman with a flower behind her ear welcomed me as if I were expected by name, though she had only read it from the screen. "Ms. Ward," she said, "your room is ready, ocean-facing. If you need anything extra pillows, sunrise wake up, just dial 0. Extra pillows, sunrise, the ordinary extravagance of being tended to without owing anyone an explanation. My room held a bed as tidy as a folded letter and a small balcony that felt like a front row seat to what light does between water and air. I opened the sliding door and the sound of the Pacific entered as if invited. I should have slept, I did not. I showered and put on the linen dress Karina had once called a little loud for your coloring in a tone that suggested concern masquerading as kindness. It looked exactly right here where color is a kind of language. I spread the cardigan over a chair to lose the last of the airplane. I ordered tea ginger bright as the morning and drank it hot even though the day was already warm. It felt like washing the inside of my throat. When I finally powered my phone, it convulsed in my hand. Calls stacked themselves like plates 23 from Michael, 14 from Karina, a handful from numbers I recognized as cousins and neighbors. The messages formed a cross-section of panic mom. "Where are you, Helena? This is not a joke. Please call us, we're worried." There were also the more performative notes "We're thinking of you at this time," from the relatives who narrate every crisis as if auditioning for a role in it. I scrolled steady. The last message, timestamped 2 hours earlier, was from a number saved only as EM, my granddaughter Emma, 17, sharp as a tack, allergic to insincerity. "Grandma, are you safe? Mom is storming and Dad looks weird. I'm not asking you to come back, I'm just asking if you're okay." The blue heart made my throat ache. I typed, "I'm safe, darling. I'm resting by the sea. I love you. Tell your brother I said hi." Then I set the phone face down on the desk, the way you set down a book you plan to finish, but not right now. Down at the Terrace Cafe, a woman arranged papaya halves on ice as precisely as if lining up hemispheres for a demonstration of the seasons. I sat beneath a fan that turned lazily as if it had no ambitions beyond being exactly what it was. The coffee came in a pot that made a little click when the lid settled, a domestic sound hundreds of miles from my kitchen and therefore free of duty. The first sip was deep and clean. I could name the flavor of it, smoked cocoa, but what it tasted like was permission. By mid-morning, I had drifted to the pool and then to the narrow patch of sand that belonged to no one, not really. Children built moats which they promptly defeated with their own buckets. A woman in a wide hat read a paperback and laughed with her shoulders. Somewhere a ukulele practiced scales soft and shy. Every so often, my phone murmured beneath its towel. I let it. When I had finally absorbed enough sun to feel it in the bones of my face, I went back upstairs and read the messages in order. The first wave were interrogatives, the second were imperatives, the third had the brittle chime of reputational crisis, Karina again and again. "Where's the roast? Where's the grocery list? Is this a prank? Do you think this is funny?" Funny is the word people use when you surprise them in ways they don't control. At last, a voicemail had the tone I had been waiting for. Michael's voice, quiet braced. "Mom, I read your note." He inhaled as if the act of reading required oxygen. "I need to talk to you." I replayed the act of writing it the night before. It had not been a manifesto. It had been a ledger and a small domesticated truth. I had listed transfers and repairs and little things that somehow become architecture, car insurance in April, when premiums rose, soccer fees in September, when the twins chose the travel team, groceries on the months when Michael's hours were cut, winter boots for the children, and a plumber for the upstairs bath when the seal went. I had written the numbers where numbers belonged and the sentences where sentences did. Over 48 months, my outlay toward household expenses, improvements, and debt service totals $180, $650. The line after that had not belonged to a calculator. I consider this balance discharged in exchange for 4 years of unpaid labor disregard and small daily erosions. Please do not contact me for chores or emergencies. There are adults in the house. I had left it under the ceramic rooster because the rooster always watched the kitchen. I did not want it watching me anymore. I closed my eyes and without trying saw the morning unfold there. Karina's slippered feet in that mincing march, the quick check of the oven, the more thorough check, The frown like a paper cut healing, the rooster, the envelope, the way indignation prefers to be fed first and read second. The phone gripped in both hands like a talisman. The phone rang with the insistence reserved for hospital news or airline changes. I answered. Mom. Michael's voice had a raw edge, as if he had been speaking through too many versions of the same conversation. Are you? Where are you? I'm somewhere safe watching the ocean, I said. I don't understand what you've done. I made a choice, I said, and I told the truth about what the last 4 years have cost me. He exhaled. Karina says you left us, like this. The reunion is happening either way. People are arriving. There's nothing to feed them. I did not say that I was not the pantry. There is bread, I said. There is peanut butter. There is a store that opens at 6 and a hot bar at the market on Cooper that will sell you 3 trays of roasted vegetables if you ask nicely. This isn't... He stopped himself as if he had nearly said the word fair. Michael. I said very gently, did you read the note, not the tone you think it had? The sentences... Yes, he said finally. I would... Res... And the figures. I didn't realize. The 4 syllables collided with something like shame. I thought, no, I didn't think. I assumed. Assumptions are invisible until they aren't. I kept my voice level as if we were threading a needle between us. You do not owe me that money. I wrote that and I mean it. But you cannot owe me and treat me as if I owe you everything else. There was a silence in which I could hear Karina in the background, words pinging like utensils in a drawer. A cousin's voice intruded, too theatrical with urgency. What's happening? What's the plan? Plans have always been the sanctuary where other people store their responsibility. Michael came back on. Emma is worried about you. I answered her, I said. I told her I love her. She says you're by the sea. I am. You can't just vanish. I didn't vanish, I said. I walked out the side door at 2:30 with a suitcase you have seen 100 times. I left you a letter you found before 8. Vanishing is a magic trick. This is household management. He almost laughed, a broken sound with humor in it. I don't know how to do this, he said. I think you do, I said. Start with a list, call the store, ask for help from the relatives who announce they are here for anything. They mean it until you name a chore, then you'll find out. Another silence. When he spoke again, his voice had moved an inch closer to ordinary. Mom, why didn't you tell me about the total, about all of it? Total about. Because you never asked, I said, not unkindly. Because I told myself you were busy. Because keeping track felt petty while doing it felt necessary. Because sometimes you don't know you're invisible until you try to wave. He did laugh at that, a quick breath that belonged to the boy who once built a fort out of quilts and called it a privacy palace. Then more softly, are you coming back today? No, I said. On the terrace below my balcony, a small child pointed at the ocean and announced blue as if he had named it for the first time. A bird landed on the railing, considered me, then considered the horizon and found it more interesting. Okay, Michael said at last. Okay. In the background, I heard Karina say his name in that coaxing tone people use to recruit an ally. He covered the receiver, but her words still threaded through, will look ridiculous. Fix this. The last 2 syllables snapped like brittle candy. We'll speak later, he said now. Careful now, formal. If you'll pick up. I will, I said though. I did not say when. Good luck, Michael. Thank you, he said, and I could hear that he meant it, and also that he didn't know what exactly he was thanking me for. After the call, I stared at my hands for a long moment, as if they might have changed shape. They looked like my hands, the same faint burn scar from an oven rack, the same wedding band I still wore on a chain. I stood and went to the balcony. The wind had picked up without turning rough. Small white caps chased each other toward shore with the unseriousness of puppies. The afternoon arranged itself into ordinary pleasures, a walk along the path where hibiscus sounded like small paper flags, a salad that tasted like it had been picked in the same hour. It was served a nap so complete it felt like waking into a new decade. At some point, I went down to the waterline and let it lap my shins. The ocean is busy with its own work and doesn't look up when you arrive. In the late light, I turned the phone face up. Photos had arrived from cousins who document everything, folding tables like a runway in the backyard, plastic cloths weighted with butter knives, a stack of boxes that turned out to be pizzas. The caption under one Karina's hand in the frame pointing, "Making Memories," had the brittle cheer of someone posing inside a structure that is missing a beam. Another voicemail from Michael, shorter, thinner. We fed everyone. It wasn't pretty. Uncle Dean said the desserts looked store-bought. He let out the smallest huff. They were. A beat. We cleaned up. The twins helped. They're asleep on the couch. I could see it, Jonah with his arm across his face, Emma barefoot with one ankle dirty where the sandal strap rubbed. The picture rose with the clarity of a place you could find in the dark. I carried it for a minute, then set it down gently where it would not tilt. Evening's first coolness moved across the room like a curtain being drawn. I closed the sliding door and the ocean quieted to a framed sound. In the mirror by the closet, I saw myself in the dress and for once did not try to evaluate it against anyone's criteria but my own. I looked like a woman who could recognize her reflection without apology. The phone chimed again, messages from numbers that had been drafted into the day's theater. An aunt who wrote, "We missed you, sweetie, but these things happen," as if I had misplaced my car keys. A neighbor asking if she should water the plants. Yes, thank you. And finally, Emma. We survived. Dad is thinking. Mom is loud. I love you. Sleep. I typed I love you. Take care of your brother. Feed up. Hydrate. Then I set the phone on the nightstand and turned out the lamp. The dark had weight, but not menace. The sea kept doing what it does whether anyone watches. Somewhere, kitchen lights went out in a house that did not own me. Here, the air conditioner sighed and fell still, and I slept the sleep of someone who had put a heavy bag down in the correct place. Sun shouldered its way through the curtains like a quiet guest who knows the house. I woke with the kind of rest that leaves no imprint, as if sleep had lifted me and put me back down without jostling anything. The ocean's sound had thinned to a thread. The tide must have slipped farther out. The phone lit as soon as I touched it. Overnight messages had multiplied, some soft, some sharp. Karina's name stacked most densely, as if repetition could do a job that language couldn't. I made tea, stood at the balcony rail, and read them from the newest backward. You need to come back and fix what you broke. Everyone thinks you're unstable. We are making a plan and you will follow it. The earlier ones were all confusion and theater exclamation points, a photo of folding tables, a caption that insisted on togetherness. Then just before midnight in Minneapolis, a final line, "We need to talk now." My thumb hovered, then I pressed call. She answered on the first ring. Helena. Her voice could have cut fruit. "Good morning," I said. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" She didn't wait for an answer. "You disappeared. You humiliated us. You left your family to serve pizza out of boxes like amateurs. And you left that note." A letter, I said, keeping my tone flat, signed and dated. The number, she said, as if numbers were vulgar. "You kept track of every little thing. How petty can you be?" "Exact," I said. "Exact can look like petty if you aren't used to it." There was a brief, sizzling silence. "Listen to me carefully. You do not own this house. You sold yours and moved in here. You have no leverage. If you don't come home and apologize, we can box your things and change the locks. I'm done indulging this performance." The tea steamed against my wrist. I set the cup down. "Karina, I said you are right about one thing. I do not own your house." She inhaled to gloat. I didn't let her. "I hold a secured personal loan against it." For a moment, her breath made a small, unguarded sound, astonishment dressed in denial. "No, you don't." "I do," I said. "The lender's copy is in a safe deposit box. The borrower's copy is in your files. Look for a manila envelope labeled Ward Jenkins Note, witnessed by your neighbor, Mr. Carlisle. 4 years ago, I transferred funds to clear your balance. We documented that as a loan at a modest rate, secured by a deed of trust. If you prefer the language of emails, see Michael's message to me on May 19th. Subject: underwriting paperwork, where he typed, "Thank you, will sign whatever the bank wants." The bank wanted a lien. "You're bluffing." "The county recorder's office doesn't bluff," I said. "I know the book and page number by heart. I can text them, but I suspect you'll find them faster than I can type." She didn't speak. In the silence, I could hear the ghost of the house, the clock over the mantel, a distant faucet, the refrigerator's motor waking. Finally, she said smaller, "Why would you do that? Why would you put a lien on your own son?" "Because I love him," I said, and heard how calm it sounded. "That doesn't make sense." "It does to grown-ups who complete large transactions," I said, the old teacher in me peeking through. "Documentation is not aggression, it is memory with a signature." The wind shifted, the palm fronds outside clicked their dry applause. She tried to find her footing another way. "Well," she said, brightly, brittle lacquer returning if you hold a lien. "You should want to protect the value of the property by, I don't know, coming back and making sure this household runs." "I am protecting the value by insisting the household run without me," I said. "Collateral gets stronger when its owners learn to stand up inside it." "You can't talk to me like that." "I am talking to you like this," I said, "and I won't be coming back today." The line went dead without goodbye. The absence of her voice felt like a window finally closed against a draft. I stood for another minute at the rail, breathing the sweet green of the morning until my chest remembered the shape of enough. Downstairs, the lobby had its own climate hibiscus in tall glass cylinders. A woman at the front desk tying her hair back with a ribbon, a bellman balancing a stroller, and 4 umbrellas with quiet theater. I walked to the cafe by the road, the one with picnic tables under a sailcloth awning and a chalkboard that apologized cheerfully for running out of banana bread by 10 most days. The place smelled like coffee and sunscreen and someone's good idea. Mind if I share? A man asked, touching the edge of the table with 2 fingers, gentle as you'd test a sleeping dog's breath. He wore a chambray shirt the color of river water and had a face you could read sun lines, the kind that come from squinting at light rather than from frowning at screens. His hair was silver, the way coins are silver used honest. Please, I said, sliding my cup toward my side. Jim, he said, sitting. Kawamura. Born Hilo, raised Honolulu, retired teacher. Occasional meddler when strangers look like they're building something invisible in their heads. Helena, I said, Minneapolis, retired librarian, occasional avoider of being told what to do. He grinned. Fair. You're staying up at the resort. I am. First time. First time here, I said, not first time needing here. He nodded as if he understood that word in its longer sense. He ordered a plate of papaya and lime and asked the server for extra salt for the pessimist in me, then tilted his head. You looked like a person negotiating with a phone. Is it as obvious as that? It's my superpower, he said. I can spot a phone argument across a soccer field. We talk the way you talk when the table is small and the weather is doing half the work. He'd taught history to 10th graders for 30 years and could still recite the first line of the Emancipation Proclamation in a voice that made the girl at the counter stop mid-wipe. His wife had died 8 years earlier, he said, without decoration, and he had moved to KAUA for the quiet that comes with good noise. He pointed with his chin toward the road where a truck rattled by with surfboards in the back. The boards clapped softly, agreeable. And you, he asked, what brings you here that isn't the winter airfare special? A change in weather, I said, atmospheric and otherwise. He laughed, not at me. Say no more. We did, anyway. He listened the way few people do with his eyes without hurrying my sentences. I told him about Arthur and the brief strokes you use when drawing a person in air about Michael, and the twins and Emma about the house with the endless dishwasher and the rooster that watched. I did not dramatize. I placed details on the table between us like seashells, not because they were rare, but because they were true. When I finished, he tapped one finger on the tabletop, a slow metronome, and said, Only, we walked afterward along the path that bent toward the cove. He showed me where the tide pools hold tiny translucent shrimp if you are patient, where the sea turtles sometimes lift their heads like commas to take a breath between clauses. He said good morning by name to 2 people of feet that remained exotic to me, knowing a place that knows you back. My phone vibrated once, then again, then settled. I ignored it until we reached a bench half in shade. The screen showed 3 missed calls from Michael and 1 message. Call me when you can. No exclamation marks. I excused myself and stepped away enough to hear. He answered on the second ring. Hi, Mom. His voice carried that particular fatigue of someone who has done a hard thing and isn't certain how it will be judged. Hi, Michael. I found the paperwork, he said. The deed of trust. The note. He stopped. I didn't know. You said that yesterday, I said. It's a lot to take in. It is. The word emptied and refilled itself. I'm not calling to argue about it. All right. I'm calling to say He paused long enough that a mynah bird across the path sent up a single heckle as if prompting him. I'm sorry. Wind moved through ironwood needles, making the sound of pouring sand. Thank you, I said. I made a list today, he went on, almost shy. It said milk eggs, garbage bags, folding chairs, paper plates. It also said, ask Aunt Janet to bring salads, ask Dean to handle drinks, ask the twins to clean the bathrooms, ask Emma to make a playlist and not roll her eyes when I say playlist. We did the things on the list. People said yes. Some people said no. The world did not end. That sounds right, I said. He took a breath so even I could see it through the phone. Karina is not calm. I gathered, I said. She says you threatened us. I did not threaten anyone, I said. I told the truth about the loan we documented. A truth is not a threat just because it reveals a limit. He didn't answer that. Instead, Emma said you texted. She was happy. She pretends not to be because she's 17, but she was. I was happy to hear from her, I said. Another pause, then a small unpracticed question. Are you all right? I am, I said, surprised by how simply it came. I keep thinking I should have noticed more, he said. I keep replaying small things and suddenly they don't look small. That's all. That's a lot, I said. Be gentle with yourself while you learn to look. He made a sound that might have been assent or grief. Okay, he said. I just wanted to say what I said. I heard you, I said. We hung up with nothing arranged and something shifted. When I returned to the bench, Jim was watching a boy teach his little sister how to throw a handful of sand so the wind wouldn't return it to her face. He patted the space beside him. Everything sounds survivable. For the moment, I said. Good, he said, and he meant the modest word. We sat until the light tilted toward late afternoon and the shadows gained edges. Conversation opened and closed like a parasol, names of trees, how to tell one cloud from another, where to stand, so the spray from a wave will salt your skin without soaking your shoes. At some point, he told me the Japanese word for neighbor tonari and then the one for the person sitting next to you on a bench. Also tonari and how the same word can carry a different music depending on who is listening. We let that fact sit the way you let a shell sit in your palm, not possessing it exactly, more like agreeing to be the place it rests. Back at the resort, the lobby piano had acquired a player. Someone fanned herself with a map and laughed at nothing in particular. I shook Jim's hand, then felt foolish for making a formality of something that didn't need one. He nodded as if he understood that too. In my room, the ocean held its color like a promise made to no one. I stood at the glass for a long time, then opened it and let the air in until the curtains breathed. The phone lay on the desk quiet at last. I thought about the rooster, about the envelope beneath it, about how paper can change the weight of a room. I thought about a voice on a bench that said I'm sorry and meant it without dramatics. When night came, it did not knock. It slipped into the corners friendly and made what it makes of everything a shape you can trust by the sound of it. Morning took its time unbuttoning the sky. I sat with the balcony door half open so the room could share a lung with the ocean. The phone lay face down on the desk as if sleeping off the day before. When I finally turned it over, 2 things waited: a text from Emma and a missed call from an unfamiliar Honolulu number. Emma first. Grandma, are you awake? I'm okay. Jonah is okay. Dad is quieter. Mom is loud. There's more I should tell you, but I don't want to do it by text. Can I call? I typed yes. She called at once. Hi, she said, and I could hear the effort not to cry pulled tight across her words like plastic wrap. Hi, love. Grandma. I think I need to tell you something weird. A breath. Promise not to gasp. I'll try. You know how Mom always said she wasn't working because someone has to be with the kids? The quotation marks were audible. Yes. Well, she's been working at that boutique on Hennepin for like 3 years. Not full-time, but enough. They pay her in cash. She keeps an envelope in the closet behind the extra duvets. She pushed the words out with indignation borrowed from an older self. When she buys things, she says, "Your grandma gifted me," and Dad looks guilty and stops asking questions. Last month, she bought that bag you hate, the one with the chain, and told Dad you gave her birthday money. But your birthday is in July and it's March. I felt something inside me go still rather than flare. How do you know about the envelope? Jonah accidentally knocked it down trying to hide a Nerf gun, she said. We put it back. We didn't take any, but we counted. Her voice flattened into fact. There was almost $3,000 in there. Silence held for a beat, not empty, but crowded with small rearrangements. There's more, Emma said softer. Dad hired a guy to help him understand the loan you talked about. The one on the house. Yes, I said. The guy found a copy of the paperwork in Mom's files. She knew about it. She filed it under taxes, like that would make it disappear. She exhaled a laugh without humor. Dad moved to Uncle Dean's last night. He left when they started shouting about you. He said he won't do that in front of us. I put a hand on the doorframe to feel wood. Are you safe, Emma? Yes, I mean the house feels wrong, but we're safe. Good, I said. Grandma, I'm here. I'm not asking you to come back. I want you to know you're not crazy. She let the word hang. That's all. That's a lot, I said. After we hung up, I carried the phone to the balcony and called the Honolulu number. A man answered in a voice pitched to reassure. Ms. Ward, Daniel Cho from Kaimana & Cho. I handled estate matters for your husband, Arthur. Hearing Arthur's name spoken professionally made the room learn a new gravity. What can I do for you, Mr. Cho? I'm calling because particular provisions in Mr. Ward's estate plan appear to have been triggered by recent events, he said. Paper rustled softly, as if even his files preferred to be polite. I know this is an unusual call to receive on a morning, and I'll be as clear as I can. All right. Your husband established what he called in his own notes a distant safeguard. It's part of a protective trust designed to activate if you were compelled his word to live away from your primary residence for 30 consecutive days due to coercion or emotional mistreatment by family. In that event, assets held in a standby. Trust would be released to you, including a property he purchased in your name. The intent, as he described it, was to ensure you had a place to go and the means to remain there without depending on the people causing the coercion. I said nothing for a moment. The room narrowed to 4 corners and then widened again. How did you know to call now? I managed. We monitor certain markers with your permission, which you gave before Mr. Ward's death. A coded check-in you missed combined with verified airline records and a note on a shared calendar entry satisfied our conditions to reach out. Another small pause, the humane kind. May I ask how many days you've been away from Minneapolis? 8, I said. Under the document's terms, activation occurs at 30. If you wish, we can forward you the plain language summary today. The trust corpus is just under $1.2 million. The property is a 2-bedroom condominium in Kapea, fee simple title already vested to you via the trust. Keys are held at our Lihue office. I am on Kauai this week and can meet you in person to review anything you prefer not to handle by email. I steadied myself with the ordinariness of the chair beneath my hand. Arthur did this, I said, not a question. He was thoughtful, Mr. Cho said. He anticipated scenarios no one hopes will arise. He did not want you arguing about your own rescue with people who depended on you. The ocean kept making the same sound outside, as if reciting a lesson without boredom. Please email me the summary and a copy of whatever I signed before I said, I'll read it. Of course, he said. Take your time. You can reach me on this number. When I ended the call, I placed the phone on the desk, as if it were very heavy and very delicate at once. The emails arrived while I watched the inbox, one with attachments, one with a kind preface. I did not open them. Instead, I took the elevator down to the garden walk and kept going until the path became sand. I stood there, ankles buried, thinking of Arthur at the kitchen table 2 winters before he died, drawing boxes on yellow paper and labeling them Trust A and Trust B in block letters, laughing at his own clumsiness with a marker. This isn't romance, he had said, but it is love. The phone rang again. Michael. Mom, I'm here. I spoke with Uncle Dean, he said, as if that were relevant to the act of speaking. He told me to be brave and then offered me leftover potato salad, which somehow made me braver. I went through the files. A breath. I found it. The deed of trust. The promissory note. Your neat signature. My sloppy one. Karina's. Mr. Carlyle's witness stamp slightly crooked. I watched a wedge-tailed shearwater skim the skin of the water, then vanish into the glitter. I'm not calling to litigate, he said. I'm calling because I also found something else. Paper rustled. Karina had a folder labeled Elder Law, petitions for guardianship, articles about incapacity standards, a draft power of attorney with your name at the top and hers at the bottom. His voice thinned. She was preparing to argue you weren't competent to handle your own affairs. The sand under my feet felt newly specific, as if each grain had a name. Did you know, he asked. No, I said, but I'm not surprised. I'm so sorry, he said, words stripped of all furniture. For the things I didn't see, for the things I saw and narrated to myself in a nicer color. Michael, I said, steady, you are seeing now? He inhaled like someone surfacing. I've asked Karina to give me space. I'm with Dean for the week. The kids are with me today. Good, I said. I let the word be small and exact. I don't know what happens, he said, catching it and stopping himself. I'll stop. You don't have to narrate for me, I said. It's enough to tell me you're okay and that the children are okay. We are. Not happy. But okay. He swallowed once loud in my ear. Also, a man named Daniel Cho left a message for me. He said he'd spoken to you. Something about Dad's estate plan and safeguards. Yes, I said. He explained it. He made that same sound of surfacing. Dad. Of course, Dad. Of course, Arthur, I thought, as if the line could cross time. I'll let you go, he said quickly. Perhaps embarrassed by tears, his or mine. I'll call later, if you want me to. I want you to, I said. After we hung up, I walked until the beach ran out, and the rocks began and stood on a flat black shelf that smelled like old rain. I had the clear, disorienting sense that 2 lives, both mine, were running alongside each other, not parallel, but braided, the one where I learned to sleep with my shoes by the bed, because a child might call, and the one where I stood on warm basalt and watched the water braid itself into rope around the ankles of a day. By late afternoon, I found myself at the small cafe again, as if thirst and habit had led me like a dog. Jim was there before me, the newspaper folded into quarters in a way that suggested long practice. You look like you've been visited by paperwork, he said, not quite a question. By a lawyer, I said, and the past. They travel together, he said, coffee. Yes. We sat with our cups and let the overhead fan mark time. I told him what Mr. Cho had said, not the numbers yet, just the architecture. I told him about Emma's courage and Michael's discovery and the folder labeled Elder Law. He squinted toward the road and then back at me, the way one measures shade before moving a chair. Are you frightened? No, I said. Surprise lit the word. I thought I might be. I'm not. Good, he said simply, as if that were a verdict. He peeled a strip of lime rind from his water and twisted it over the glass to make the air briefly smell like somewhere else. Evening slid down without drama. The resort lights came on in a staggered line. The pool acquired a thin blue ghost of itself. I went upstairs and opened Mr. Cho's emails. The summary was written the way I like things, written plain, without swagger, every term glossed in the margin. A clock in the corner of the screen said 4 o'clock. 30 days was a number I could count without trying. The next days arranged themselves like beads on a string, small, bright, complete. Messages became less frantic and more human. Emma sent a photo of Jonah's science project, a model of a watershed labeled in pink pen. Michael called in the evenings from the twins' room at Uncle Dean's place, where a dinosaur poster hung askew. He reported simple things, dinners he made that did not burn an apology. He delivered to Emma for assuming her eye-rolling meant indifference rather than discomfort the quiet at 9 p.m. when everyone was tired enough to give up their armor. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes I did. Mostly we did not. Karina texted me once more a 3-part message in which anger braided itself with bewilderment and landed in an accusation. I did not reply. She would have to learn to hear without an audience. Mr. Cho met me 2 days later at a modest office in Lee Hoogi with a view of a parking lot and a sliver of blue. He had kind hands and the good manners of someone who has spoken more than his share of bad news in rooms that smelled like copier toner. We signed what needed signing for now and left what could wait to time. He handed me a small envelope with a key on a blue tag. 20 minutes up the road, he said, if you're curious. Curious is one of those words that seems to hold its own leash. I drove north under a sky that refused to choose a single blue, turned east at the Coconut Marketplace, and followed a street that leaned toward the ocean. The building was not grand. It did not want to be. The unit number matched the tag. Inside white walls, stone counters, 2 bedrooms, a lanai that made a square of air seem like furniture. The ocean faced the windows in that confident way the Pacific has, as if it knows it is the first and last thing on a list. There were towels in the linen closet and a single orchid on the table, a long-necked thing with yellow petals like small flags. In a kitchen drawer, I found a corkscrew and a note in Arthur's handwriting, folded small. H. It said the letter like a door jamb. If you're reading this, I'm sorry I'm not there to pour the first glass. Consider this one poured. A. I sat down on the cool tile because my legs did not trust me. When I could stand, I opened the lanai and let the sound in. The next week blurred and sharpened by turns. Emma called from the bus stop to say she'd aced a quiz, and then to confess she had eaten dinner on the couch and spilled sauce and cleaned it without being caught. Michael texted a photo of a grocery list written in his blocky hand with each item checked off. A second photo showed Jonah rinsing plates, sleeves, rolled serious as a surgeon. The cousin chorus dried up. Karina's posts shifted, fewer polished tables, more inspirational graphics about boundaries written in cursive. I did not engage. On the 30th morning, the light was clean, the kind that makes you think walls have been washed. I walked to the shore and counted waves because counting makes time honest. Back in the room, the phone chimed once with an email from Mr. Cho activation. Confirmed, the subject line said. I pressed my thumb and the message opened into the simplest possible sentence. P. The trust terms assets have moved. The KAUA property is now yours to occupy as you wish. I did not whoop. I did not kneel. I sat very still and felt a weight lift that had lived so long in my muscles I'd mistaken it for bone. When I told Michael that evening, he was sitting at the small table in Uncle Dean's kitchen, a cup of tea steaming like a good idea. He smiled the way people smile when they mean it and wished smiling didn't require face muscles. Dad, Emma said, off camera, tell her about the thing. He rolled his eyes in inherited gesture. We found a recipe card box in the garage, he said into the phone, affecting nonchalance and failing. Grandma, your handwriting is ridiculous. Legible, I said. The word is legible. He lifted a card to the camera. Chicken with 40 cloves of garlic. Emma insists on the full 40. Emma is correct, I said. In the second month, I moved my suitcase into the closet at KAUA and put an extra toothbrush in the holder. When Jim knocked with a bag of lilikoi from a neighbor's yard, I took it and learned how to cut the fruit so the seeds did not run. We existed in the small, friendly structures that make days welcome coffee at the cafe that runs out of banana bread. By 10, a walk to a tide pool that keeps tiny galaxies in bowls of stone, a seat on a bench that knows our names, now, the way a good chair does. Spring found the plumeria trees practicing their stars. Emma and Jonah arrived in sandals and declarations. They made forts with couch cushions and ate breakfast on the lanai, and tried on words like trade winds and reef. Michael visited a weekend later, leaner in the face, slower in the temper. He hugged me in the hallway of a place that smelled like salt and laundry and said nothing into my shoulder for a count of 5, which was enough. Papers moved back in Minneapolis, quiet, serious papers signed, in offices where pens have a particular weight. Karina stayed in the house for a time and then did not. I did not follow the rest closely. It is possible to love someone and not attend every scene. One evening, the 3 of us stood at the waterline and watched the sun drop into the place where distance looks like a color. Jonah held a shell to his ear and made the face people make when they believe a story is happening inside a small thing. Emma took pictures and then put the phone away and just stood there. Michael threw a stone so flat it skipped 5 times and said, Dad taught me that. And I said, he taught me that too, and no one corrected the grammar. When they flew home, they left the smell of shampoo and the precise chaos of children in drawers. I watered the orchid and wiped the counter and listened to the room be a room. Later on the balcony, Jim handed me a cup of tea so dark it looked like a decision. You look located, he said. I am, I said. We sat in the soft in-between when the day is done, but the dark hasn't finished its work. The palms ratcheted their dry music, a gecko scolded the world for existing. The night came on quiet and complete. Somewhere, a kitchen light turned off in a house where I had once kept watch. Here, the ocean rehearsed the one thing it knows and never tires of knowing. I closed the door to the lanai and the sound became framed but not diminished, as if the room had learned how to listen. I washed my hands at the small sink until the water ran cool, then turned the tap with the same care you give a book's last page. The air held a note of salt and something sweet I couldn't name. When I lay down, the sheet felt like fresh paper. I slept. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.